Howdy, guys, and welcome to a recap of episode 12 of Survivor Season 41. And welcome to Cliff Notes from a long, long way away from that island. Another exciting episode last week. Just as a review, we lost Liana, and we are now down to 6 castaways and a final episode before the 3-hour finale that's kicking in next week. Man, 3 hours. I need to just rest up, get this voice ready to go. We're going to have a lot happening next week, but before we get there, we got to get from 6 people on down to 5, and we get to do it tonight. So we had it a tribal, as I mentioned. Liana got sent home. Danny and Deshawn are definitely feeling on the outs now. They had the other 4 people have more or less aligned against them. They sent out Liana, so now the 3 becomes 2. Liana warned them when they sent out Shan. She said they're going to cannibalize us, and sure enough, that's what's happened. So Danny and Deshawn feel a little bit on the outs at this point, and they're feeling a little bit betrayed by Xander as well. Xander suggested, he may have outright told them that he was going to vote with them to try to get out Ricard. Didn't happen that way, so they're feeling a little bit betrayed. But here's the thing. Even though Danny and Deshawn are feeling a little bit on the outside of the big alliance, 4 versus 2, is this a possibility to take out a strong player like Xander or Ricard? You could take one of them out and try to convince the other side that, hey, there's still 3 of y'all versus only 2 of us. It gets rid of a strong player. It doesn't affect your power position. So I kind of see some play of that sort potentially happening this week. But we're going to find out. So first of all, we've got Xander talking to Danny, and he's coming right out and he's telling Danny, saying, look, I get it. I know you wanted out Ricard and all of that, but he said, I needed to keep Ricard for one more vote because I truly feel like Ricard is a bigger target than me. As long as Ricard's here, they're going after him. Y'all are going after him and not me. It's why I kept him, Danny. And it's just because he's a bigger target. But now I'm ready to send Ricard home. I think Xander was being honest about this. I really think he was kind of fessing up, explaining exactly what the situation was. And I do think he may be ready to send Ricard home this week. The question is it too late to have that opportunity or not? But we have that. And then just a little bit later, we've got Deshawn. While Xander's talking to Danny, Deshawn is talking to Heather. And they're going out a little bit. They're talking about some of the same conversation that took place last week. Very emotional part of Tribal about Deshawn in particular, the difficulties of trying to play the game to win the game versus also him feeling some extra responsibility as a person of color to try to represent the culture as best he could and all that. And he's talking to Heather about that. And he's talking about how hard it was to vote out Shan and then to turn around and vote out Liana. And you can tell this is from the heart, and it really still has gotten to him that he's trying to play he's got so many different stresses and pressures on him going on. We also have Deshawn later talking to Erica, and she talks about how she has similar issues, not from a minority standpoint, although obviously she's a minority as well, but she's talking about from a gender standpoint that there haven't been a lot of female winners in the game of Survivor. And so she feels like there is pressure on her to do everything she can to support a woman, which could have been supporting Liana instead, but she chose to do what she thought was best for her game as an individual and not necessarily what was best for the gender side of the equation. So, it's interesting. That conversation at Tribal, I think it was just so heartfelt, and it really hit home with a lot of people playing this game. And I think when people are playing in a very stressful situation with so much money riding on the line, even though these people are enemies a lot of times and only one can win, you still develop this shared bond with each other. And that's whether it's Big Brother or Survivor or any of these other reality shows. You develop a certain respect and understanding with each other that allows some of these conversations to take place. So completely non-game related, but for another week, I really enjoyed the conversation itself. But we see those conversations taking place, and very interesting as indeed. But let's get back to the game itself. Day 22 of the reward challenge. Day 22, they're almost through day 22 of my Big Brother season. I think we voted out just a couple of people at that time. It's so early in the season for us. For these guys, they're just about through. But we've got a reward challenge, not immunity, just a reward challenge on day 22. They're going to be randomly split up into 2 teams of 3. Competition taking place in the water. One at a time, a team member has to run off a net ramp, dive down, release some balls. They call them buoys, but they're balls that float to the surface. Grab one of them, swim to a platform, put it in the basket. Then the next person jumps off a ramp, grabs another one of the balls, swims to the ramp. Third person does it once they're all on the ramp. Then 1 or 2 take turns throwing, or they don't have to take turns. One can do it the whole time, but someone takes the balls and tries to throw them in 3 different nets while the others are trying to retrieve the balls when they go into the water itself. First one to get done wins the reward. So what's the reward? Well, we actually see that Jeff's feeling kind of friendly to the folks. He says, I'm going to give you 2 choices. I'm going to let you either have 1 plate or 1 reward that consists of grilled chicken and veggies, or I'll give you another one that consists of cake, cookies, candy, really satisfy your sweet tooth. Now, I got to say, normally I'm a sweet tooth kind of guy, but if I'm out on that island, I've been eating nothing but rice the whole time. Veggies and chicken sounded pretty good. I have a feeling that even old sweet tooth hog probably would go for the proteins, but you got to win it first before that happens. And so he lets them know that those are going to be the 2 choices the winning team gets to make. Good? Well, good for most people, but Deshaun, he's going to push it just a little bit. Deshaun says, look, I was really hoping for that we maybe were going to get letters from our families, Jeff. You know, that's kind of what I was here for. And Jeff, the fact they even showed this in the edit, I immediately thought, all right, well, here you go. We're going to get some letters at some point as well. But Jeff kind of says, man, y'all are never happy. You're never satisfied. No matter what I offer you, you want something else. So are they going to get the letters or not? We don't know at this point in time. I kind of think they are, but we don't know at this point. So the first team is Ricard, Heather, and Danny. On the other team is Xander, Deshaun, and Erica. Pretty good split between these 2 teams. I don't think there's a real favorite going into this thing. But they take off. Xander and Danny are the first 2 to take off for each of the teams. Xander probably is releasing the ball. So he's a little bit ahead of Danny, but it's pretty close competition. And basically both teams are more or less tied by the time they're all on the ramp with their balls in the baskets, and they start shooting the hoops, trying to get 3 balls in 3 separate baskets. Now there's a little change in strategy, and it looks like it's probably just pure exhaustion. The blue team starts getting behind because they only have 1 person in the water going after the balls. I think it was Ricard. Heather, for whatever reason, she gets out of the water and is on the ramp while who's shooting the balls for them? Danny. Sorry, took a second. So Danny's shooting. Heather gets out of the water. And I think she's just exhausted, but that means Ricard's the only person chasing balls. At one point, Danny shoots one, deflects way off away from the basket. So Ricard's having to go a long way to get. It takes too long. As a result, the other team, which is Erica, Xander, and Deshaun, they've won the competition and they get to choose which reward they want. I don't think there's any real argument amongst them. They all say, we need that protein. We want the chicken. We want the vegetables. Yeah, I do the same thing. I think that's a foregone conclusion. You never know, but that's what I would have done as well. But as it turns out, there are no family letters. There's no family visits either. It's at least not this week. Then maybe next week during this 3-hour finale. But who knows? You know, they have the families come out and visit every season, but considering this is only 29 days, they may not get it this season. That's pretty quick. So I wouldn't be surprised if we completely lose that aspect this particular season, which I kind of hate. I like seeing the family show up, see the pure emotions. Man, I wish I could have gotten a family video during Big Brother as well, but I didn't, and I don't think they will either. But they'll survive. They only have another week or so out there, so it's going to be pretty quick. But no letters, but chicken and vegetables. Sounded pretty good. So while these teams are split up, some of them getting their reward, others just going back to camp. Deshaun is talking about, the game never ends. You never stop playing the game. And Deshaun is planning to take this time to see if he can't convince Erica and Xander that Ricard really needs to go. Ricard is probably the biggest threat in this game. Xander would probably argue that. I may argue that Xander's right up there as well, but Ricard definitely is a big threat in the game. And so Deshaun wants to spend this time to try to get Xander and Erica on board to get him out. It shouldn't be a hard argument, right? It seems like it's pretty obvious that Ricard, maybe it's time for him to go. And it isn't a hard argument. It seems like they're all on board. They're all happy with it. It's easy to get five other people to gang up on one person when you're such a big threat. So they're all on board saying, let's do it. We'll talk to the others later. Yeah, absolutely. It's time. Maybe we should have done it last week, but it's certainly time. So it seems like we have a plan in action for this week. Now, we do have during this conversation, Deshaun talking again with the others that won the reward, Xander and Erica. He's talking to them saying, look, I'm happy to go to final three with the two of y'all. I think that would be a fantastic final three. I am on board all the way. He's not dumping Danny, right? They've already lost two of we'll call the Camp Out Alliance because they used that term once upon a time. They've already lost two of that alliance that they had with Shan and Liana. I just don't see Deshaun losing Danny as well if he has anything to do with it. Especially, is he going to be tied with Erica? Considering the fact that, as I've said before, he and Danny were ready to throw competitions, throw immunity challenges just to get Erica out the door. And now he's saying he wants to go to a final three with her. I'm not buying it. And I'm not sure they're buying it either. But at least everyone's saying what everyone else expects them to say. And they're saying, oh, yeah, if someone says, I want to go to a final three with you, you don't ever say, yeah, I think you're lying. I don't believe you for a second. You say, thank you. Absolutely. I'd love to see it. Just what I was thinking as well. So everyone's saying what they think needs to be heard. I don't know if any of them really envisioned that as their final three. We'll find out, though, won't we? All right. Meanwhile, while they're all enjoying their chicken and baked veggies and such, we've got the other three back at camp, trying to kind of make busy and all that. And at one point, Ricard and Heather take off. I think they're going to get some firewood or whatever. I have a feeling they were off talking to the woods a little bit, but we didn't see it for this episode itself. They go off to do a little firewood chasing down or whatever. Danny immediately says, nah, this is the time. Let's go look for an immunity idol. Now that, remember, Shan got voted out week before last. She had an idol in the pocket, so there very well could be a new idol hidden out there somewhere. So Danny's looking for the immunity idol. Unfortunately for him, he takes a little too long. By the time he gets back, Ricard has noticed that he's missing. And Ricard also seems to notice a change in Danny's attitude, emotions when he gets back. He seems very happy, Danny we're talking about. And so Ricard immediately assumes that Danny probably found an idol. Now, is it good for other people to think that you found an idol? It could go either way. On the one hand, they may be a little less likely to vote you out the door thinking you'll use that idol and then maybe flip it back on this person, whatever. But there's also the possibility if they think that you've got an idol, they may be more likely to vote for you just to force you to flush that idol out. So yeah, it could go both ways. But Ricard is convinced that Danny very well has an idol, and we got to figure out how that's going to play into strategy through the rest of the day and into the evening and tribal challenge and such as that. So we've got that. Another conversation. Deshaun is trying to do what he can to get the target off himself and Danny. I think he's talking to Erica, and he's really trying to drive a wedge between her and Heather, because we know these two are pretty tight. The last two women in the on the island been working together. They've successfully booted a few people because they've been working together. And so Deshaun's trying to drive a wedge through the two of them by talking to Erica about how similar she and Heather's game has been, that if they were to go to a final two together, it would be tough for Erica to argue that her game's any different from Heather's and blah, 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 blah. I got to say, personally, I think Erica going to final two with Heather, there's a whole lot of worse people on this island right now that Erica could go to a final two with. I think Erica wins it. I think Erica has enough relationships with people, has played just enough strategy, been involved with it just a little bit more. I think she would win over Heather. Maybe not. It's tough to tell, but I don't think this is as big an issue as Deshaun's trying to make it out to be. But Erica does seem a little bit concerned that she could get her resume wouldn't be as strong compared to Heather's they have played similar games. Okay, I still think she beats Heather in a final two competition, but we'll see what happens with that. So with that being said, on to the immunity challenge. We already had the reward challenge, which took place in water. Immunity challenge is taking place on land, and it's kind of a fun competition because the first thing you have to do, you've got a bunch of rope that's all wrapped around you, a little spool that you're standing inside, and each of the castaways has to spin down a little path in order to unspool this rope. Once they get to the end of the spool or the end of the rope, they can take the spool off. Of course, by now they're super dizzy. And now they have to go through an obstacle course that has balance beams and nets and lots of things that don't work that well when you're dizzy. And along the way, they have to grab blocks that have letters on them. It's going to be a puzzle, a letter, a word phrase puzzle at the end that they have to solve. So sure enough, they all take off. They're all spinning. So by the time they get to the nets and the bounce beams, people are falling everywhere. No one's having an easy time. I don't know. Why is it so fun to watch dizzy people fall sideways when they're trying to run? But it's always funny. So they are doing that puzzle. Now, it's fairly close. I got to say, even some people who aren't necessarily always a comp beast, like Heather, are doing a decent job. There's not a huge division between any of them by the time they get to the end and start solving the puzzle itself. I think Heather maybe is the last person to get there, but not by a whole lot. Everyone's working on the puzzle, but the winner, not a huge surprise because he's done pretty well. Ricard quickly turning into the comp beast of this season. Once again, he has won. Jeff's a little amazed. Said, "Man, you got down here. You solved it fast. How'd you do it so fast?" Ricard says, "Well, when you said a whole bunch of 4-letter words, I just started thinking about every 4-letter word I could think of. There's a few words that you pretty sure weren't going to be used, but I thought of most of the 4-letter words that may have been used as part of a Survivor challenge, and so he seems like he's just a little bit more prepared at the end. You still have to solve the puzzle as well, even if you know what the phrase was, and he's great at that too. So Ricard wins immunity. Best laid plans of mice and men. Yeah, Heather or Erica and Xander and Deshawn had worked out this plan to get out Ricard. Well, it isn't going to happen this week, and it may not happen next week the way Ricard's playing this game. But the end result, Ricard is safe. The winner or the booty is going to have to come from somewhere else this week. He needed this immunity win just like he needed last week and the week before, if I recall. And he got it. He's doing what it's. I got to say, if Ricard makes it in the final two, it'd be hard not to vote for that guy for the win, right? People can call him a villain. They can say he's ruthless, whatever you want to say. I admire the game he's played, and I think at this point, he's got to be the leading, the top choice for who I would probably vote for to win this thing. I think Ricard's my top choice, if not him. Probably Xander, and then after that, there's a few different people, but yeah, Ricard's looking good right now. Now, we now know Ricard's safe tonight. So who's in danger? Well, I gotta say this: if I'm Xander, my idol's getting played tonight. As much talk as there's been about getting at this big target, Ricard's safe. Who's the next biggest target? It's gotta be Xander, right? You would think. So if I'm Xander, I'm playing my idol tonight. Doesn't mean he'll get played, but if I was him, I'd be doing it tonight. But who's at risk? Well, I don't know. Maybe Heather or Erica, if the guys were able to bond together. But it also, the easy solution with a group of 4 and then Danny and Deshawn, the easy route is to just vote out Danny or Deshawn. You don't rock the boat. You don't want to get the other people in your little group of 4 mad at you by suggesting anything crazy. So it very well could turn to those two unless the 4 guys could somehow bond together and maybe flip that target on Erica and Heather. If I'm Danny and Deshawn, that's certainly what I'm going to try to push is get these ladies out. Let's let the 4 of these guys just go at it and make things happen. I don't know if that's going to be the way they're going to do it, but that's kind of what I thought as I was watching this thing. Now, here's an interesting little wrinkle. Fly in the ointment. That's the term. Fly in the ointment. The fact that Ricard saw Danny potentially find an idol. He thinks he found an idol. Does that put Danny at greater risk because Ricard may be wanting to get him out before he gets a chance to play the idol? Whether or not he actually found it. Sometimes in this game, perception is reality. Whether or not Danny actually has the idol, the fact that Ricard thinks he does Could it put his game at risk? We're going to find out. So we see Deshawn and Danny talking to one another back at camp, and they're thinking that the two of them are the primary targets. It's probably going to be one or the other. And Ricard, he comes right out. He doesn't pussyfoot around. He says, look, Danny, I saw you. You looked pretty excited when you got back to camp after you'd been gone for a little while. Did you find the idol? And Danny kind of says, well, no, I didn't. But, if I did, I wouldn't tell you anyway, right? Or I couldn't tell you something like that. And Ricard kind of grins because he knows that Danny's not going to tell him one way or the other. It doesn't matter what answer Danny gives back. Ricard's going to be a little suspicious. And then later, Danny actually confirms to the viewers that he didn't find it. He didn't find an idol, but he does think that it could help him if Ricard thinks that Danny has an idol. It may make them a little cautious about trying to vote Danny out, because what if he plays the idol? And so maybe that helps him. As I said earlier, I'm not sure if it helps or hurts when people think you've got the idol. It really depends. But let's talk about this idol searching itself, because Danny mentions that all he found was spider webs and some firewood and some burlap. Burlap, they actually show a shot of a little piece of burlap wrapped up, like there could easily be an immunity idol hidden inside of it. I don't know. Was it just some fancy editing? Was that from some other episode a few weeks ago or something? I don't know. If I see a little piece of burlap wrapped like that and I don't grab it, well, that's pretty bad. I don't know if Danny actually saw that or not. I hope not. I hope he doesn't get home and say, oh my gosh, it was right there in front of me. I should have grabbed it, but I missed it. But whatever. He says he didn't find an idol. He tells us as viewers he didn't find it. I don't think he found it. But there may be an idol out there somewhere. We do have Xander talking to Heather about the idea. He's saying, look, maybe we need to keep Danny because Danny's athletic and everything. Maybe we need to keep Danny because he might be the best chance at someone beating Ricard in the next round. He's telling Heather this. Now, he's talking about Danny, but I got to think that Xander's kind of subtly making the same suggestion about him, saying, keep me around, Heather, because I may be the best chance about taking out Ricard also. It's got to be a little subtext of his speech to Heather, but he's saying, well, maybe we ought to keep Danny for that reason alone. But Heather's coming back and saying, look, I almost think Deshawn may be a stronger threat than Danny in terms of capabilities to win challenges and everything else. Heather seems like she kind of wants to hold on to Deshawn. Now, I'm not sure if it's as much for competition threats as maybe Heather feeling like she's just got a little bit better relationship with Deshawn than she does Danny. And so it's all about her personal game. I think that's more likely, but it doesn't really seem like there's a lot of consensus amongst these castaways as far as who amongst Danny or Deshawn they maybe want to get rid of. But we've got Erica suggesting to Heather, saying, look, we need to talk to Ricard. We need to tell Ricard to split the votes between Danny and Deshawn, and then we'll vote out Danny. So let it be a tie. Then we'll vote out Danny afterwards. And she's thinking that Deshawn might be more willing to work with the ladies. Again, it's all about, at this point, when there's only 6 people getting ready to be 5, it's not about the biggest threat. I mean, sometimes it is. It's more about getting out the person that you feel is the least likely willing to work with you, the least willing to take you to the next step or two down the road, that much closer to the final tribal council. So yeah, big threat. Ricard, everyone recognizes that it's a great time to get him out, but at the same time, you also want to keep the people that you feel safest with, and I think that's what we're facing right now. And so Erica's thinking that holding on to Deshawn might just be a little bit more likely, just because he's worked with her and Heather just a little bit more earlier in the season itself. So Erica's campaigning to actually send out Danny, even though Xander's kind of thinking the opposite direction. But Ricard, always observant, always paying attention. He's a little bit worried about this Deshawn and Erica and Heather trio, a relationship amongst the 3. He recognizes that these 3 feel a little bit tighter. He's recognizing the same thing that Erica is saying, that Deshawn is probably a little more willing than Danny to work with the 2 ladies going forward. She sees that as a huge advantage. Ricard sees that as a huge disadvantage. So who's going home? I don't have any clue at this point in time. So, with that being said, let's go to tribal council where we're going to find out who's going home. We've got Deshaun just straight out saying, look, I really think it's going to be me or Danny. And at that point, then he also points out that he and Danny were gunning for Ricard and saying, look, he's a big threat. It's not anything personal. It's just Ricard. You were a big threat. So, yes, indeed, we were gunning for you. Everyone's kind of, it just shows a lot of respect amongst everyone playing this game, that they're willing to acknowledge who they were targeting and saying, but yeah, it's not personal. It's just part of the game, which I absolutely believe. And Deshaun is trying to go out of his way, I think, to make sure everyone knows that Ricard truly is this big threat in the game. He's wanting to make sure the target shifted, even though Ricard isn't going home this week. Deshaun or Danny, one of them is sticking around, and you sure do want to make sure everyone's focused on Ricard when it comes to looking for those big threats, right? So I think that's part of his speech right now going on. But as much as Deshaun's saying Ricard is this big threat, Erica jumps in and says basically that everyone has different biggest threats, and it's based on your own personal game, where you are in the game, who you've been working with, etc. And just because one person may be your biggest threat doesn't mean that person's my biggest threat. So she's kind of countering some of what Deshaun is saying. So we've got that. Now, before we get to the vote, right before we get to the vote, it seems like Deshaun says, look, there's a good chance I'm going home, or, there's a 50-50 chance that I'm going home, whatever. So before I go home, I'd like to throw out a little info. Forget info. I want to throw out a little shade. And Jeff says, well, sure. Let's not let a good travel go to waste. Go for it. Deshaun, spill the tea, if you would, please, sir. And Deshaun jumps in and says, look, here's the deal. Heather, just so you know, Erica will not be taking you to the end, to the final two. That's the big news. That's it. I understand that Deshaun is trying to stir things up a little bit, perhaps as a last minute Hail Mary. Maybe he's trying to get the target shifted off him and Danny. It is a little bit of a Hail Mary, I think. But I don't think this comment is that damaging to Erica, because after tribal council, Erica could always go back to Heather and say either he's lying, I never said that, or just say, look, I was lying to him. I didn't want him to think that you and I are too close, but I got you to the end, girl. We're good. So I don't think this is that damaging to Erica as maybe he thinks it is. But here's my thought. Is Deshaun saying this to hurt Heather or Erica, or is he saying this more for Ricard to hear and to understand? A way to make this Deshaun and Erica and Heather trio relationship seem like it's less strong, like maybe it's crumbling, because I don't know. It just didn't make sense what he was saying right now, and I just don't know that driving a wedge between Heather and Erica at tribal council is going to do much for Deshaun at this point. I just don't think he's saying it for Heather's benefit. I just wonder if it was said more for the benefit of Ricard, and a bit of an act on his part just to make it look like, really, we're not working together. You don't have to worry about us, Ricard. We're arguing with each other. Maybe you ought to be looking at Xander instead of Erica or myself or Heather, because we obviously don't get along, Ricard. I know. We're going to find out next week if that's the case. It just didn't strike me as completely genuine, some of this info that he's throwing out here at last minute. And in fact, Ricard points out, says, it's kind of strange, Deshaun, that you would reveal this, because if it's true, if Erica truly isn't taking Heather, isn't there a good chance that she's taking you instead? And if she's doing that, why would you throw her under the bus? Why would you ruin all of that? Why wouldn't you just stay quiet? Which I get. If someone comes to me and says, I'm not taking the person I think I'm taking you instead, my lips shut. I'm not saying a word. That's good news for me. Why rock the boat? And so Ricard's saying, it's a little strange that you're throwing this out, Deshaun, at this point in time. And Erica comes back and she says, look, thank you. You helped me, Deshaun, by saying that, because throughout this whole season, I've never known whether I could trust you or not for certain. And now I know that I can't trust you. And so she's saying, thank you for that. And he's saying, no, you're welcome. So again, on the surface, it seems like now these two are are upset with each other. They're going to be enemies going forward. I'm just not buying it. It just doesn't make sense to me. I could be wrong. We'll find out next week because it all finishes up next week. But we're going to find out. So on to the vote. No idols are played. Remember I said earlier, if I was Xander, I'm playing that idol. The fact that he doesn't just shows how confident Xander is. There's going to be 5 people left, and Xander still has an idol. If he's not playing it this week, which he's not, man, I'd be playing it next week. I can't remember when the idols run out. I'd be playing it next week. If that's the case, it guarantees Xander entry into the Final Four. Well, then it's anyone's game, and he's a strong enough competition, a threat. Xander's looking pretty good right now. I'm amazed that no one has come after him more than they have. Ricard's been fighting for his life every episode, it seems like. Xander, he's just kind of floating along with all these idols and advantages, and it says a lot about his social game that he's been able to survive as well as he has. But again, no idols are played, and we end up with a tie vote. Yes, 3-3 vote between Danny and Deshawn, just as Erica had suggested earlier, and it looks like her plan has come into play. So it's a tie between Danny and Deshawn. Everyone revotes. Those two can't vote since they can only vote for one against the other. And in the revote, it turns out Danny's going home. I really thought that Deshawn maybe had kind of opened his mouth a little too much and burned a bridge with Erica, and as a result, cost his chance to stay in the game. But now that's not the case. Danny is going home. Erica apparently has voted to send Danny out the door, which that's interesting. I'm telling you, I don't think they're going to be at each other as much as they're portraying they are. I think they're going to continue to try to work together. They may not trust each other, but when there's only 5, even people you don't trust, you still have to work together. If Erica and Heather can pull in Deshawn as a third, so the 3 of them versus Ricard and Xander, one of them very well could win the immunity idol. The other 3 say that we'll go against the other one. It seems like a strong plan. Seems like a good time for Erica not to hold a grudge or to be upset, even if everything truly was animosity and not just an act. Don't hold a grudge. Get the person that you think you can work with going forward. And truly, Heather and Erica and Deshawn suddenly may be in a decent position of power at this point in time. Amazing how this game flips and flops, right? In terms of who's got power, who doesn't. Which means, now here's the rub. If Ricard wins immunity next week, Xander plays his idol next week, well, your targets are incredibly limited, and at that point, probably Deshawn may very well be the one that's in trouble. But again, for this week at least, Danny goes home. Now, Danny did tell Deshawn that he used to play football for the Dallas Cowboys. I guess I hadn't realized that no one knew he was a football player up until this point. I think Danny played a great game. He didn't come across as overly competitive to the point of creating a threat. He was a quiet player. He was an observer. He let other people open their mouth and stick their foot in their mouths. Danny seemed to be very willing to just be patient, observant, and kind of gauge what was going on and react to it. So congratulations to you, Danny, for making it to 6th place. Played a hell of a game, just didn't quite work out at the end. I thought he was going to stay at least one more round, but he didn't. So we lose Danny this evening. We're down to 5 people. Incredible. And we get an announcement from Jeff that, well, there's 5 of you left. Don't get too comfortable because we're going to send you to a brand new island. Everything's fresh. You're starting all over again. It's probably that island they sent Erica to when she had the little hourglass that she broke, where there was nothing there. They may be in for a horrible few days. This is day 23. We're going 29 days. They may have 6 days on the island with nothing, which is kind of interesting. No rice, limited water, no protection from the environment, no shelter, nothing except bugs and sun and wind and blowing everything, sand and all of that. They're going to be miserable for the last week as they get into some of the most important challenges. That's going to figure out who advances to the very end. And next week, someone is going to win $1 million. And I'm so happy. I'm so excited to see the final episode. So there you go. 5 people left. We're going to see what happens next week in a 3-hour finale. I'll be dropping an episode to talk about that. But before I do, just on a personal note, I'm heading off this weekend to the Hearts of Reality fundraiser that's benefits Give Kids the World Village charity over in Orlando. All the reality people are heading that way. I'm so excited. I'm going to be meeting Wendell Holland, Rick Devens, Jerry Matheny, Janet Corbin, Troy Zan, Ben, so many Survivor contestants from seasons past. I'm going to be doing a little fanboy myself. It's going to be a lot of fun. So it's going to be a great weekend. And then I come back on Wednesday and we find out who's won this very fast season, but a really incredible season with an amazing cast. But until then, guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. And once we wrap up Survivor, I'll be doing other shows. And if you're subscribed, you'll get notifications whenever I drop a new episode. Have a great week, guys. Have a great weekend. Until next Monday or next Wednesday, SKD 143. Cheers, my friends. Bye.